When did the American dream go from like working hard to just like being handed $1 million?
1970, when Nixon took us off the gold standard.
No.
Fiat currency.
Dude,
Okay, come on,
it's
dude.
when
Fiat,
the
when you could take out
communists
unlimited money.
infiltrated American institutions and have pumped us all full of the notion that the government is supposed to give us everything.
When was that?
Starting in the 50s and the 60s, dude.
It used to be
McCarthy was
the
right.
American dream. The American dream actually was upward mobility. There are certain countries where you're poor, you'll always be poor because you're not a noble, you're not landed gentry, and you're not a king. It's never going to happen. You come to America and you could flick off the president. You could see the president walking by and go, "Hey, president, F you," and they can't do anything about it. The American dream was that you could be gutter trash and grow up to be a millionaire as long as you worked hard and figured it out. And that still exists. The problem is
It still exists. It happens every day.
And at some point, millennials especially figured the American dream was, I do as I'm told, I take out massive loans, I go to college, and then I'll be rich.
It could have been the Rockefeller movement. Like, he monopolized the education industry and kind of destroyed people's will to. I never went to business school. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to sign a check till I was 19 years old. I didn't know how to write a check. Isn't that insane? I never wrote a check till I was 19.
Let me tell you something. Yes, I understand what you're saying, Jack, about communism and infiltrating schools and all that stuff, and I've heard a lot about it. We know that China has an interest in promoting this because the Chinese accounts on Twitter, this is what James Lindsay was saying, they used to mock the Baitsua, the white left. That's their word, is Baitsua. All of a sudden, they started supporting them, saying, yeah, America's racist, because they realized it was weakening the country. But I'll tell you something. In my experience, my anecdotal, my personal worldview, my lived experience, my lived truth.
Your viewpoint?
My personal point of view. My family, I always would hear these stories growing up about how someone my family knew was making six figures because they went to college. And that's why you have to go to college to get a good job. And I said, not interested. And then what I realized later in life was that a lot of these people after World War II, the boomers, right? They had high school educations and they were feeding their family, 3 kids and a wife, just on their high school education. They made it work. Granted, they didn't have the same level of technology or comfort as we did. So, standard of living was particularly different. But with a high school education alone, I read about how the boomer generation, people with high school educations, they were managers at companies. They had jobs. They weren't making 6 figures. They made the false assumption that the money came because of the college degree. However, if you grew up at a time where you didn't need a college degree to succeed and feed your family, but you decided to pursue your passion, what was really happening is that those who are most passionate and driven towards a certain goal decided to go to college. College was incidental. It's a spurious correlation. The actual correlation is those who are willing to work hard to attain or achieve some goal and those who are not. What happens then when your entire society starts telling all the young people college is the key? Take out $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 worth of loans you'll never pay back in a lifetime. You end up with a bunch of angry, indebted serfs, can't find work, and think the American dream was stripped from them. Well, they were lied to for sure by a society that went astray. But these are people who need to be taught how hard work can give you the American dream. The only problem is the hard work they worked towards was a trap. They dug themselves into a massive hole, generated tons of debt because they were dumb 18-year-olds who didn't know better, and because I blame the older generation, stripping the value, extracting what they can, and then we get financial crisis, chaos, and everything's falling apart. So forgive me if I'm a millennial blaming the older generations, but look, we inherited this stuff from you, so it's not on me. You're a Gen Xer, right?
Represent.
You get a free pass.
I'm Gen X as it gets. Tim, a lot of what you said is absolutely right. The people that made the most of a college degree were going to make the most of life anyway.
When they didn't need one, though, right? Yeah. The point is, if society tells you you don't need to go to college and you go, yeah, but I want to because I really want to study this thing. Well, it's no surprise that this passionate, driven individual became successful. But you get a bunch of people who are like, I remember when I was 18 and they were like, you got to go to school. And I'm like, for what? What do you like doing? I don't know. Well, how about music? You play music? I guess. So what, I was going to be an 18-year-old going like, I don't know. And then, but draining tens of thousands of dollars in debt? That's the stupidest idea. I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. I don't want to owe anybody money. I'd rather just like sleep on a couch and go skating. So it worked out for me. I don't got any debt. A lot of people.
I do have debt, but it still worked out for me because I wanted to. I wanted to go. I wanted to study acting, and it was worth every penny of it.
Not for everybody. Most people change their majors and end up not getting a job in their field.
You got to want it. You got to be good at it. You got to be dedicated to it. You got to live it, breathe it, focus on it every second of every day, it is your life. That is what you are.
I'll tell you what else it
Then
did.
the money's subsidiary.
You want to know what else college did? You want to know what else it did, Jack? It took kids out of their communities and sent them to faraway lands, and then all of a sudden their ties to the community were fractured. So now you had people growing up and they weren't going to the water cooler. They weren't going to the churches. Maybe they're not religious. They weren't going to the community centers. They weren't engaging in local activism or local journalism or local politics. They moved away. Maybe there's a good thing in that, but ultimately it means our community started breaking apart. And now one of the biggest problems we have is people are replacing their real communities with fake online communities, often with sock puppet accounts. And they're looking for some kind of gratification from online strangers who have cat avatar profiles or something, or a cat anime pictures on their Twitter account.
That's current, but the future is actually using the internet to find real communities. 100%. It's happening. I'm doing it. I won't pitch it anymore. You guys.
But we got to bring people to the real world.
That's absolutely 100%. Tim, you're talking about things that have been in play for decades and decades and decades and decades now.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's true.
These ideas were seriously implanted in our brains back in the 50s and the 60s, and they've now made their way through the institutions to the point now where we are a sick culture of victims who rank themselves according to how aggrieved they are, not according to how successful or accomplished they are or how realized or actualized that they are.
It's actually a detriment to be successful.
Right, because that's evidence that you're part of the white supremacy culture.
Well, that's what they said to me when I was at Occupy Wall Street. Before I got any recognition, I had all of these people saying, like, "See, look at you, man. You know, you dropped out of high school, and like you're a smart guy. You should be very successful, but the system doesn't allow it. You know, you come from a mixed family, and it's very obvious how it's holding you back." And then all of a sudden, I'm featured in Time Magazine. I'm featured in all these websites, and they said then, Tim Pool is white, and he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Moral of the story: don't listen to other people.
In this, the moral perhaps, and the gist of the story is, if you succeed, they will accuse you of being privileged and always having been privileged because the idea of hard work doesn't exist to them.
Exactly. Because if you succeed, that means that the only reason they're not succeeding is because they didn't try.
Yep.
That's why the Asians are going to get crushed by the blacks in this new culture scenario. That's why they're trying to make it look like there's white on Asian violence happening all over the universe when there really isn't.
This is one of the most
The
offensive.
real issue is that the Asian immigrants are making African American indigenous people look bad.
Do you think that's why the violence is happening?
No, that's the violence is what it is. That guy shot up a bunch of hookers, basically.
Yeah, that was a white
sex
incel
related. Okay, but this idea,
Well, we don't know that's true. Actually,
it doesn't matter. The point is that it's not some white supremacist going on a rampage trying to kill a bunch of Asian ladies. Like, come on. So what's happening here is that the CRT folks and the African American victim community that wants to be victims, not all of them, the specific community, are saying that we live in an oppressive society that keeps minorities down. Well, guess what? All these Asian folks are coming from all over, not just Far East Asia or Southeast Asia or India Asia, but all of those Asia parts. They're coming to the United States and they're out earning white dudes.
Yeah, this actually surprised me because I didn't realize Filipinos actually have some of the highest incomes in the United States.
Yeah, dude, it's Indian folks Asian folks come to the United States, make more money than white people. Why? Because it's a meritocratic system. If you're good at something, you get paid for it. You can be Tim Pool, drop out of high school, not go to college, become a many thousandaire here living in wherever we are. But the reason that this conflict is going to come between the blacks and the Asians is because the Asians are just proving the thesis of Black Lives Matter false.
No, it's not a race thing. It is not going to be black people versus Asian people. It is going to be woke people versus Asian people.
Sorry, you're right.
Yeah, it's so like Alan West sitting here the other day.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I'm sorry. All of those comments were meant to say the CRT, social justice, Black Lives Matter folks that are pitching.
They're mostly white.
All of them are pitching the black victimhood narrative.
Yeah.
That all black suffering is the result of white systems of oppression, which I heard chanted over and over again on the streets.
But bro, they're not saying just black people. They're saying a hierarchy of different races are oppressed by white people. They used to claim that it was Asian people on top. Now, after this shooting, they're saying Asians are actually oppressed again. So it's not about any one race. It is about manipulative, extremist, dogmatic cultists who will use whatever narrative they have to gain power. Sometimes they'll talk about Black Lives Matter, but they'll use the communist fist as their symbol. Sometimes they'll blame Asians because you've got that one woman, I'm not going to say her name, but James Lindsay's been tweeting up a storm about her, where she was like, well, you see, the Asians who came here chose to come here in the early American history. They weren't forced to do it. Then after this wave of violence, they say, now she's tweeting, they were forced to come here, actually. It was indentured servitude, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, okay. You never cared about these people. You manipulate these people. It doesn't matter if you're Asian, Latino, Hispanic, Black, or whatever. All they want to do is pit one group against the other to gain power. So they're going to use victimhood.
Amen.
And they're going to say, these people are oppressing us. And you know what's funny? They accused Trump of being the demagogue. They said he was the one who was vilifying different groups of people. Sure, there were certain instances where Trump said some things like, he wanted to ban all Muslims. Donald Trump literally said that he was calling for a ban on Muslims until they can figure things out. Eventually, what they called the Muslim ban came to include a couple other countries like Venezuela and North Korea, so it wasn't exclusively a Muslim ban.
Or contain all of the Muslim countries.
Right, it didn't include Saudi Arabia,
Indonesia.
Right.
American
so
Muslims.
The point was, Donald Trump certainly had his bombastic demagoguery type language, but they are built upon it and have been for a decade.
Yeah.
Trump was a response to it, not the creation of it.
Amen.
When they kept coming out in the early, late 2009, early 2010s, screaming about white privilege, racism, systemic racism, white people, and you can see in the LexisNexis data, the hockey stick of the New York Times just screaming about white privilege. Then you got what they were calling the white lash, a backlash, but white people were now saying enough of this already. The funny thing is, we were taught growing up, segregation is wrong. People should be treated equally. It was the dream of Dr. King that all people would be treated based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And which party is fighting that tooth and nail? The Democratic Party. Joe Biden's Department of Education just rescinded a rule that said racial affinity groups was discriminatory. That rule's gone now. That was a Trump rule. Trump said you can't do this. You can't separate people at schools based on race. Biden's administration? Oh, no, you can do that again. Congratulations.
Columbia University just said graduations by race.
That's right.
By race. Now, what's funny is at the end of the day, you're right. There's going to be one small group of people over here, the woke, and there's going to be a huge coalition of diversity over here opposing woke. And in fact, the opposing racial justice people will be more diverse than the group saying that they're, the woke folks. And the irony is it's not going to be African Americans in the middle of that. It may end up being black trans women or whatever, but truly
it's
all of this is suburban white liberal women.
That's right.
This entire thing is about suburban white liberal women, their guilt, their interest in destroying the patriarchy. They're lying supinely on the ground, begging for acceptance and forgiveness, and they're willing to throw their entire country away just so that they won't be called a racist when they haven't been one, they aren't one, and they've just taken this identity on for themselves. I did an interview with Arthur Millick, the head of the Center for the American Way of Life in Washington, D.C., a Claremont East operation. And he pointed out that even the ancient texts, the classics, they talk about the demise of a society is when it's run on the whim and fancy of single women. That is what we have today. The entire nation, all of our political discourse, all this woke crap, all this everything is based on trying to appease this power of single white liberal women.
And you know what's funny? Half of guys are just doing what those women tell them to do.
Of course, because what do they want? They want the women.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're just saying,
so
tell
they'll
us
do
what
whatever.
to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.